Welcome to a milk market tidbit for the July milk production report that the USDA released yesterday. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones, and I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, August the 22nd. So normally we get the milk production report as the first report of the month, and then we're going to get the cold storage report, which we'll actually have on Friday of this week, and then followed by the dairy products report, which usually comes out at the beginning of the next month to kind of tie everything together. So the milk production report is an interesting report because there's three numbers that we always talk about, milk per cow, number of cows, and milk per cow per day, but there's only two of these that are actually measured. And so once you know two of them, you actually know the third one. So going into this, my guess was that we're going to be about 99%. Again, I'm doing month over month. A lot of people do year over year. And I'd given myself a little bit of wiggle room of plus or minus 0.5%. Now, if you go to the federal milk market order tidbit, I was actually at 100%, but then when I did my podcast on Sunday, I kind of re-looked at things and said, no, I think that's a little too aggressive. And I also had milk per cow coming down seasonally, about 0.75 pounds or so. So where we ended up is production was actually down about 1.7%, so just a little bit lower than what I had expected it to be. And milk per cow was down about 0.5 pound more than I would have expected it to be seasonally. Now, the way that I come up with these typical numbers is I take the June values and then, we're going to apply the guess down here. But these were all revised. Whenever these get revised, that changes my typical numbers. Now, StoneX does theirs as year over year, and so they are not subject to that revision, kind of like what my numbers are. I usually base a lot of this stuff on USDA month over month numbers, and if we look at where July came in, normally about 97.8% month over month, but I thought that we'd taken a little bit of a higher hit in June, and therefore, might be a little bit higher. And we came in at 98.3. Now, the question always is, what did the trade think of all of this? And so this afternoon, we were actually down, limit down, September, October, November. But when we closed here just a few minutes ago, we've come off of that. So we should not be closing limit down today. And kind of the big question is, why did the market respond negatively? Now, the spot market came down 6 cents on barrels today. And so that was part of it. But the other is StoneX commented that this was actually a little bit better than a lot of people had feared it would be. So that actually was a little bit bearish for the market. But when I look at all of this, I see a very bullish picture. Cow numbers, were revised, came up just a little bit, but we're down 43,000 cows from a year ago. And if you look back as to where we've had, these kind of cow numbers, it's not been very often. And using the barnyard math that I've been using, I now come up with our number of replacements as 0.71. And so the question is, how low can that get before it's unhealthy for the industry? And we just kind of look at the slaughter data, and this time I put in the cull rate because we have the cow numbers. So last data we have is for August 3rd. We're down 9,000 from a year ago, but our cull rate is dropped below 25%, numerous times. Now, some of that is holidays that have really low slaughter numbers, but the question kind of remains is, if we're under 27% consistently, is that an unhealthy kind of scenario? Now, what do you mean by unhealthy, Larry? So it's kind of like my wife's beef herd. She hates to cull cows, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves with all these old beef cows that we've all got to get rid of at one time. And so if we're not careful, we kind of go over the edge and have to sell so many that it is not sustainable. And so that's my question for the industry. Are we going to get these replacement numbers so low that we're going to end up in a non-sustainable situation? This is the graph of daily production. And my system actually cut it, right here and said we got a better fit if we have 2 linear regressions as opposed to 1. So ever since the middle of 2022, we've been on a downward trend. And prior to that, we'd all been on an upward trend. Now, this did come in a little bit stronger than I thought it would, but not significantly. And also, we've also got to look at this and say, can we see where bird flu actually started in this system? And I don't see bird flu at all. You know, we've just been downtrend, even in 23, long before we knew anything about bird flu. One of the ways I put my estimates together is to look at the federal milk marketing data. So this is the graph from that. And again, we had this big swath of that were up. Now remember, this is plant data, so there could be some moving of milk around. But interestingly, if we plot this out over time, the federal milk marketing order was a little higher than USDA, which is, you know, where we knew we came in. And we ended up about 67% of the milk in the nation being pooled in the federal order, where last month we were probably 65. So it's always hard to know, you know, when they're depooling so much class 4, what's going on with that. And I think that's part of what happened here. Now, in the next couple months, we're probably not going to be depooling anything. Class 3 has kind of gone above class 4. So for September and October, I'd be surprised to see much depooling. This is a graph that DFA puts out. Now, this is year over year production, and I show this just because, you know, here is Texas that had the bird flu, and now we're 6% higher than we were a year ago. So anything that had bird flu has pretty well come through that. And again, I don't think it ever did have a huge impact on the total milk supply. South Dakota was up fairly significantly, and interesting, Florida was up just a little bit, and Ohio was up a little bit. Everybody else was either pretty neutral, or Arizona, New Mexico were down, and Minnesota was down. Milk per cow kind of gives us an idea of, you know, how farms are kind of pushing cows or not relative to feed. And like everything else, this kind of split right here in the middle of 2022. And it's been fairly flat, and this did come in slightly higher than I would have expected based on a seasonal level. So overall, I kind of look at the milk production report that came out yesterday as, you know, fairly bullish. You can have a different view depending upon, you know, where you stand. But the global dairy trade was up, and we're going to get the cold storage report on Friday. And right now, I've got about 21 million pounds of cheese coming out of cold storage. And if that verifies, then that is going to be extremely bullish. Now, next week, we're going to have egg prices on Fridays, about the only major report that's coming out. But I will get you another report on Friday.